Hey YouTube, it's Seth here, and today I'll be talking about a new build called the Rangerbrid. Now, it essentially is the updated version of the original Ubear hybrid, which specializes in using a ranged weaponry, aside from spells, of course. Now, you can see the basic setup of the stats, as well as the pros and cons of the build. Now, what this build is essentially at level 136 back then, you didn't have the stats to completely utilize this, but now at level 150 you can max out most of your stats. So the general playstyle of this build involves spell spamming until the monster has no health, or in case that isn't enough, you can use your ranged weapons while sitting inside defensive armor. Now what this does is it essentially maximizes your efficiency when it comes to spellcasting, as well as your damage, because you take in about 80% damage and deal about 92% depending on um, what kind of weapon you're using, whether it's a damage or effect based weapon. Now, you might see this is the Undying Boss, which is basically a template for how the revamped Necromancer class will appear. Now, um, it's a really hard monster. I mean, most people I know have trouble with it, but as you can see, this build is holding on pretty well. Sure, it might be because I'm using the Wizard ropes, but this is a build showcase, and I'm supposed to, well, sell the build, aren't I? So wizard robes, but now you can see the actual build, the way it focuses. Now I'm at 13%, I still took 343. At a neutral armor, imagine a fully offensive, how much damage it's going to take. And due to the fact that he's a pretty strong monster, he is going to resist Shadow Feeder Pendant, so I can't rely on celerity all the time. But even then, I've managed to take him down in about 6 turns, which is pretty sweet. I mean, it's not that great. People can do it within 2 to 3 turns. Now we come to the essence of Wind Dragon, which a lot of people find it difficult to beat because of its high HP, the fact that it's almost it can block every hit due to its spell, or the fact that if you don't have a lucky strike, it caps your damage at some particular hit point at a particular range. At level 150 it's about 175. As you can see, it's been about a few turns and I've barely taken in any damage, while the dragon is almost about 80 or 75% of its health. So this should show you the capabilities of this build against tanky monsters. Now, one problem you might face is the fact that this build focuses purely on defense and spellcasting. It might leave your weapon damage to a bit on the lower side, so that's something you definitely want to keep in mind. Also, this build focuses a lot on your dodging, so having a high combat defenses is definitely necessary. So try to keep your dexterity and luck at the max, as well as your int. Your strength can suffer, but that won't be an issue considering you're a defensive character. Another issue is it's up to you whether you want to use pure damage weapons or effect based. Like, for example, in this video against this monster, I'll be using the Flash Bang Rat Grenade, which essentially gives up about 30% damage to give a blinding effect. Now, this has a decent synergy with the Twilight armor, which has great defenses on its own, as well as a Mastercraft bonus that focuses on blocking. So it works out pretty well. It's got a decent synergy, but the damage, as you can see, is pretty abysmal. Well, it's not right now. Yeah, it doesn't hit that hard. Barely. You'll be lucky if you hit about 200 on 100% resistances. So that's something you definitely want to keep in mind, that this build is not all powerful. It sacrifices its damage in order to maximize its blocking and spellcasting damage. So everything has its pros and cons, but that's something you definitely, it's up to you when you choose the build. Now, when you run out of mana, you can do one of two things. You can use potions to get your mana back in case you want to spellcast, or you can use Pixel Ether to get your mana back for spellcasts. Now keep in mind, this build focuses solely on spellcasting. Sure, you can use bows and stuff, they still hit pretty decently. Like now we're fighting a regular monster in comparison to the other ones we've faced so far. And you can see it's even without a minus 10% resistance misc, we are still taking a decent amount of damage. It's not really that great. And you can use armor spells significantly, as you can see. I've hit about 1200 with a spell. So, yeah, spells are your primary force of damage. Now, against bosses, you can try to use your mana for healing spells or just as a safeguard for finishing. But this build is going to be slow in case you don't cast spells. That's one of the problems that our rangers go through if they don't use berserker heights. And berserker heights are pretty horrible because you take in a lot of damage, and even if you do deal about 3 times as much, it might not be worth it in most cases. Most of the armor's elements are covered so far, so fully defensive armors, well, they're not an issue. Now, coming back to berserker classes, some of you who have a death wish or are YOLO swagsters, you can definitely try this out. You can use berserker heights as good as anyone, but keep in mind that because you have no endurance whatsoever, you're going to have to use something like pendant or the gallon or some other resistance mix to make sure you don't die, especially while questing. And considering monsters now scale to your level, and if you're at level 150, almost everything you face will hit about 3 to 400. So it's not recommended, but in case you like living dangerously, be my guest. One good way to use this is Shadow Feeder Pendant. Now, for a cost, it can give you a celerity, which allows you to attack twice in one turn. So keeping your HP low, it won't. As long as the monster doesn't resist the save, you can get in as many turns as you want, and the monster won't attack even once. And yeah, as you can see, even at endgame now, using the quest as VBG, which is basically the strongest weapon, I'm hitting some insane amount of damage, which is pretty awesome. Now I've given a description of all the armors that you need in all the weapons and all the shields, and keep in mind that for this build you do not need any premium items. I mean, sure, you can get them, but everything you need is inside the game, so you don't have to purchase Z tokens or packages or anything of that sort. If you're a guardian, then that's about it. You don't need anything else. And if you're an adventurer, you will have a few issues with ranged weapon damage, but that you can modify it with improving your strength by sacrificing luck and or int, depending on your choice. And yeah, that's about it. Hope you liked this showcase, and do leave a comment in the section below. And thanks for watching.